Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and as of the last time I checked, I have now reviewed 152 video games with footage. Considering that I didn't even own a capture card when I first started reviewing video games, this is kind of a big milestone for me because I really like to actually show you guys the beautiful graphics and a lot of times also the music of the games that I review. So a similar event happened a while ago when I did the best games I've ever reviewed that I had footage for, but someone in the comment section said that was kind of lame. So I thought, well, what do all video games that I reviewed with footage have in common? The answer was they have graphics. Not all the games I've reviewed are winners, but I thought it might be fun to look at the prettiest games that I've reviewed that have footage. If that's too confusing for you, I'll just abbreviate to the most beautiful games I've ever reviewed. If one's left out, it's probably because I haven't done a video review of it. Looking at you, Twilight Princess HD. So without further ado, enjoy these gorgeous graphics. At number 25, we have Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii. Of course, you're seeing Switch footage, but honestly, the Wii version doesn't look too much different than this, besides that it's not in HD, and my best friend can't tell the difference. I'm sure the average person watching this can't either. Super Mario Galaxy was one of the few titles where you could look at it even on the original hardware and think, am I playing this on an actual system? That was made by Nintendo, because Nintendo is not known as the company that focuses on graphics. There are a couple of things that have aged, not the greatest. Sometimes the grassy textures look flat rather than having individual blades of grass like Super Mario Odyssey, but overall this is definitely a looker on the Wii that you shouldn't miss. At number 24, we have Super Mario Party for the Nintendo Switch. This game honestly isn't too mind-blowing of having graphics, but on the other hand, it occasionally has some really brilliant effects, like this river rafting section, and some of the mini-games have decent lighting and water effects. I don't think this is going to blow my mind because it still has that cartoony feel that Mario Party games are known for, but it could look a lot worse. At number 23, we have Rayman Legends Definitive Edition for the Switch, although if I had video reviewed the Wii version, I would have said that this was just about tied, as there's not really a major difference between games. See, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is one of the only Switch games that actually manages to show that the Switch is more powerful than the Wii U. These other games need to realize, dude, the Switch is only marginally better than the Wii U. Don't try to pretend that this is the most mind-blowing thing ever when this is actually another console generation old. Still, this hand-drawn style works really well, and I'm glad that they could get these music segments fully animated in such a stunning way. At number 22, we have Paper Mario: The ThousandYear Door for the GameCube. While I definitely think this game deserves a remaster at some point, as watching it on the actual TV definitely has its fuzzy moments, but this overall art style still works really well. The colors are really bright, and even though all the characters are made out of paper, they do a good enough job of standing out from the environment so that they don't blend in. I also just think that this is really creative in the art department, because instead of being restricted to a bunch of generic toads like the later games, this allows for some really wild and wacky designs both in the environment and the characters. So please bring this over to Switch. Origami King was great, but boy do we need a Paper Mario game that wasn't held back. At number 21, we have Paper Mario: The Origami King for the Nintendo Switch. Well, I think the character designs are better in ThousandYear Door, as to be expected from the crazy restrictions the team has. I think Paper Mario: The Origami King overall has better looking environments, and with the origami models, that allows for much better cinematography and animation overall, even if I think the way Mario moves is kind of weird. Like, it always looks like any gust of wind will just blow him away, quite literally, anytime soon. The game also occasionally pulls some really stunning effects. Like when you flood a certain town with water, man, that water looks practically photorealistic. Most of the time, you just get the same old paper shenanigans, but at least the paper shenanigans look better than they've ever done. And hey, there are some really creative bosses, not counting this one, that actually look almost like they could be a real-life object, which a lot of them are, so that's kind of a moot point. At number 20, we have Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity for the Nintendo Switch. Man, did I pick a bad time to record this, as the first DLC wave just came out today, but yet I'm showing the DLC purchase bonus because I still don't have footage of the DLC yet because it's going to take me a while, guys, so just be patient. Age of Calamity is not as impressive graphically as Breath of the Wild, just because you're not allowed that freedom of exploration and you're in very cramped corridors. I do think it has better animation than Breath of the Wild by virtue of it being a Warriors game, but nevertheless, Age of Calamity does a good job of showing some cartoony effects that aren't too aggravating like the ones in The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and it has some pretty decent cutscenes. If only there weren't instances where the characters would get stuck against a wall or you wouldn't be able to proceed from an invisible pathway, then maybe it would be higher on this list. But as of now, its mix of cartoony nature coupled with some occasionally realistic textures prevents it from putting it higher on the list. Number 19 is, wait for it, Dragon Quest XI S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Quite possibly the longest title I have ever seen on a video game. Makes Layton's Mystery Journey, Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy Deluxe Edition have a run for its money. Dragon Quest XI definitely has some surprisingly good textures for being a Switch game. The reason why it's so low on the list is because the character models have that classic Dragon Quest feel as opposed to being updated and modernized and maybe having more flowing hair or fur, and instead they just look like how they've always looked from like the DS and beyond era, just now with more smooth textures because it's in HD. Nevertheless, I really like the world design of Dragon Quest XI, and I definitely think that Square Enix really knew how to optimize this really well for the Switch, as they even allowed the battles to be sped up instead of going at a snail's pace, so I can appreciate the animations even more. Just fix the character designs next time, guys! Number 18 is The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild for the Wii U, because you know I'm always going to take the Wii U version over the Switch version, especially because this was the original hardware and it still looks this good. Honestly, there have been times where I've been watching my friends play Breath of the Wild and I'll say, wait, is this the Wii U version? They'll say, you bet it is, and I'll be like, dang. The Wii U is definitely capable of some amazing graphics. While I think Twilight Princess has a more realistic look, I definitely appreciate how Breath of the Wild stylistically looks more like a cartoon, but it has more of a realistic flow to its animations and environmental design. Like the grass will be different lengths depending on the region you're in, the rain effects will look more realistic, and overall it feels like a living, breathing world, which is what the team was going for. While I'm not the biggest fan of the cartoony character designs and how big their eyes are, on the other hand, when the sun shines over the water and the beach, man, sometimes I can't stop myself from gawking. At number 17, we have Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu for the Nintendo Switch. I can't believe this came out on the same hardware as Sword and Shield, yet Sword and Shield looked like it's a GameCube game in comparison. Let's Go Pikachu might have been held back a little bit in its level design and character models due to the fact that this is a remake of a Game Boy game, but on the other hand, the grass, the lighting, and the water effects are really beautiful, and the animations and Pokemon designs really seem a bit outdated. Like, could they really not have animated the Pokemon, I don't know, actually going up to the opponents instead of just having the model jump up really slightly and then having a foot effect against the opponent? Nevertheless, this is a fun game to look at, and I especially love how the music accentuates the fact that this is a new Pokemon experience. So while I definitely think a brand new Pokemon game should go more in this direction, I also think they need to step it up in the animation department as well. Number 16 is Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Yes, you got that right, an older Hyrule Warriors game. Looks better than the newest one. Admittedly, this still looks like a Wii U game, as this is the definitive edition of a Wii U game that got remastered on the 3DS that's now remastered on the Switch, which is not a bad thing because it goes to prove my point that the Wii U actually has really amazing graphical capabilities, but no one knows about it because no one bothered to buy the dang thing. Hyrule Warriors, honestly, when I first saw that, I thought it looked better than Breath of the Wild, and when I first saw it, I said, is this the new Zelda game on Wii U? This looks fantastic! It also has some absolutely stunning animations, and while there are definitely moments where I wish I could explore this world more, The cutscenes are absolutely mind-blowing, and the fact that they got them to run on the 3DS with 3D effects, if you play it on the new 3DS, is also kind of stunning. I honestly kind of wish Age of Calamity had kept to this viewpoint, but then again, it wouldn't have looked like a Breath of the Wild clone, so I guess I'll let it slide for now. Number 15 is Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore for the Nintendo Switch. This is yet another example of a game on the Wii U that was ported to the Switch that looks practically identical to its Wii U counterpart, albeit with faster loading times and a couple of additional animations for doing the session attacks. Honestly, this is the best looking Fire Emblem game I've ever seen, and it's not even that much of a Fire Emblem game. It actually resembles the Persona and Shin Megami Tensei gameplays even more. So what are you waiting for, Nintendo? Make a Fire Emblem game look this good, and make the animations this flashy. And this is one of the few cases where I would say, even though the animations aren't particularly realistic in terms of how these characters can do backflips and quarter flips in the air without a trampoline, it still looks way better than some of the ugly anime-esque stuff that Three Houses pulls off. Number 14 is Sonic Forces for the Nintendo Switch. Sega apparently spent 4 years just trying to make the engine for this game alone, and while it stumbles compared to the other console versions, I definitely think it paid off in the overall art style and graphics department, as sometimes I regret going through these stages so fast because I just want to look at how the grass waves in the wind and how the water effects are so stunning and how the cutscenes manage to be very entertaining and how there's usually something going on in the background, and I could just go on and on. Sonic games are usually more about the action than the graphics, and sometimes even if the graphics are good, then the gameplay suffers if you look at examples like Sonic 06. But in Sonic Forces' case, I both like the game and the graphics. There are people that are going to disagree with me, but hey, art is subjective and so is gameplay. Number 13 is Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. As much as I don't like Super Mario 3D World as a game, I at least have to admit that it's one of the most gorgeous looking games on the Wii U. And Bowser's Fury not only packs the 3D World experience, looking pretty much exactly the same, but it also adds Bowser's Fury, which, now that I've watched Steve Gaming's video, I realize that maybe the graphics were a bit on the lazy side with the colorization, but the water effects are still magnificent. The level design still looks like a good example for what an open world Mario game could be, and hey, when you're fighting against Fury Bowser, those reflections of the fire in the water are absolutely stunning, and I definitely hope that Nintendo will get an all-new graphics engine along this style and show us what a true open world original Mario game that isn't based on an existing failure could look like. Number 12 is Ukulele and the Impossible Lair for the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, this is kind of what I would have imagined Banjo 3 to look like if it had been released on the Switch. As the graphics, I mean, how much more can I say about how much I love good water effects and good fire and good animations and all of that jazz. I also really like how Ukulele does a good job of having each level have 2 different versions, so you can have different graphical effects. Like you could go through a water level and the next time you go through it, the water is covered with ice. And so the developers managed to make every single scenario look good. Not only that, but the level design manages to play just as well as it looks. While I still haven't beaten the Impossible Lair part, that's also one of the ugliest parts of the game. So hey, at least I got past all the good looking sections. Number 11 is Animal Crossing New Horizons for the Nintendo Switch. While it still looks like an Animal Crossing game, it at least refines the graphics in such a way that this could objectively be considered most people's best looking Switch game. It does a good job of casting shadows on the environment. The leaves actually blow in the breeze at different speeds depending on how much wind there is. The water droplets actually will create ripples in the water, and there's just so many little itty-bitty details that add up, like the fact that the museum is one of the most stunning museums I have ever seen. There are some photorealistic reflections in the fish tanks. The pictures are all based on real pictures. And overall, I feel like Nintendo actually tried to make this realistic as opposed to making it stylistic. And if we can get an Animal Crossing game that doesn't look like an Animal Crossing game, that actually looks like it could be a Grand Theft Auto game, man, I'm gonna be sold. We're getting into the top 10 now, with number 10 being Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time on the Nintendo Switch. Say what you will about the other versions, but I haven't played them, so looking at the Switch version as its own game, this, by far, hands down, would win the award for Best Animation, if that's what I was doing, as the characters have so much expressions, and even the littlest eyebrow twitch or a movement of the hands is considered by the team, and it feels like instead of just the lazy puppeteering animations that we get in anime, Toys for Bob really thought, okay, let's make these characters expressionate, realistic as much as you can be with all of these out of proportion character designs. But not only that, but the environments look really good as well. Everything just screams personality, and everything screams we're actually going to think about how characters would react while making it slightly Saturday morning cartoonish, but I'll take that over an anime any day. Number 9 is Super Mario Odyssey for the Nintendo Switch. This was one of the earliest Switch games, and yet it still managed to be a graphics showstopper, not only for the Mario series, but honestly for a lot of Nintendo Switch games, period. It just seems like Nintendo thought about every single little detail, and they even went so far as to make Mario's hair look more realistic and have more hair follicles. You've got long, flowing blades of grass, you've got the waterfall even splashing the screen, Mario takes his sweet time to dry off, the lava effects look phenomenal, and overall there aren't really too many bad textures in Super Mario Odyssey, but even if there are, it's deliberate to show how Mario's traveling to various different kingdoms. I particularly like the Fossil Falls level, which is the first kingdom that you go to, which has all these beautiful waterfalls and dinosaurs that look like they could be in another game, and the flowing grass, and Mario's movement even adjusts if he's going down a slope. And overall, I wish more companies would pay attention to all the little details and make this seem like it's a living, breathing world. And just think, I'm not even showing you footage of New Donk City. You want to talk about photorealistic. At number 8, we have Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch. Yes, this footage may be tried and true, but this music for Bionis' shoulder will never get old, so I'm just going to keep showing it until you guys say, I can't stand this awesome music anymore. That's a contradiction, but I'll let it slide. The funny thing about Definitive Edition is that it's a port of a Wii game, yet it doesn't feel like it with how massive the environments are and how you can seemingly explore for hours. I think this is probably the game that I've taken the most snapshots of on my actual Switch, and this is one of the few Switch games that actually looks realistic. It doesn't look too much like an anime, even if the characters have anime-like expressions. They still are realistically proportioned. Their hair actually moves in the breeze. There's huge blades of grass in the open areas. And this is the kind of game where screenshots and graphics, honestly, you could have either one and you could still be mind blown by it. But it's especially great that in this Definitive Edition you get a huge open world area to explore with no loading screens, and you can even change characters' equipment in the cutscenes, and there's dynamic weather effects that just add to the charm. And overall, if you didn't know that this was a port of a Wii game, you would probably say, dang, Monolith Soft really knew what they were doing. Number 7 is Orient the Blind Forest Definitive Edition for the Nintendo Switch. This was originally an Xbox One exclusive, and then somehow Nintendo negotiated enough with Microsoft to get it on the Switch, and it even had the Xbox One logo on the promotional trailers, which it still blows my mind to this day. This was one of those games that I think people didn't think would be on the Switch because it was on the Xbox One and that system is more powerful, so therefore it shouldn't be on the Switch because the Switch can't handle it, yada yada. Honestly, people have done comparisons and they've actually said that the Switch version actually looks better than the Xbox One version in some cases, and even has additional animations, which I'm always a fan of. Ori just has such a smooth feel that you really feel like you're playing as an acrobat, and the environments feel both hand-drawn and realistic at the same time, While Orion the Will of the Wisps definitely surpasses this in almost every way, this is still a pretty close contender. And if you were to only buy one of these games, you'd still be in for a real graphical treat. And just think, this list isn't even ranking the music, as I would say the music is just as gorgeous as the graphics, but I guess that'll be for another list. Number 6 is Orion the Will of the Wisps for the Nintendo Switch. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin with how amazing this game looks. This was yet another game that people thought, okay, Ori and the Blind Forest was a one-shot, but there's no way this will get running on the Switch. And while it is true that this game has crashed on me quite a few times, and going into the map definitely has its fair share of loading woes, from what I've heard, the other versions have that problem too, so don't just say it's a poorly optimized Switch port. There are some amazing background effects, and especially when Ori is carrying a torch, this game just looks mind-blowing. And you probably wouldn't be able to tell that this was a Switch game at first glance, which is the best kind of Switch game in my opinion. It basically has all of the graphical effects that Ori and the Blind Forest did, and gives Ori a lightsaber to make him, her, not really sure which one it is, even more agile than they already are, which is always a good thing in my opinion. And then there's the boss battles, which just take things to a whole new level, and then the music accentuates the action really well, and then there's the level with all the bubbles, and I could just go on and on and on, so just enjoy this torchlight for now, and hopefully you'll watch my review to see even more good effects. Number 5 is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for the Nintendo Switch, one of the few games that actually manages to look better than its Wii U version, although this is technically a sequel, not a port, so that's probably why. But still, like, even the stages that were originally on the Wii U look leagues better as of the result of new shading, better lighting, etc. And what I especially love is that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate even takes games on similarly powered platforms and manages to make the stages look even better, as you take Garrigmach Monastery. Fire Emblem Three Houses was also on the Switch, but yet this looks leagues better than how it actually looked in Three Houses. Not only that, but the characters are really well animated. This does not feel like a lazy product at all, and even the DLC that was made during COVID still manages to not be lazy and still have great quality. Overall, I think that there are some times where the explosions and fire effects look kind of cheesy, and there are stages that look deliberately ugly, but that kind of adds to the charm because a lot of them are based on retro games, and some people really like retro preservation, so I'll give them a point for that. Number 4 is New Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo Switch. Remember how earlier I said that I didn't like to take my reviews and just mute them? Well, I unfortunately had to make an exception for this because my footage for New Pokemon Snap got deleted. I have no idea what happened to it. Could have sworn I saved it because, you know, might be on my best games of 2021 list, so I'm really trying to hold on to all the footage of it. But we're not here to talk about footage. We're here to talk about the graphics. I can't believe that this is a Pokemon game, because you take Sword and Shield, which is on the same hardware, and this looks leagues better. Sword and Shield may have a better art department, but that stuff is usually in the background, and you can't really explore all of the sprawling hills and landscapes, whereas in this, that's all you do is explore. There are some, my gosh, I don't even know where to begin with how these textures are animated, and how the Pokemon have actual personality and they're not lazily developed, and how I wish Bandai Namco would make every Pokemon game instead of leaving it to Game Freak, who doesn't know how to animate to save their lives except in Let's Go Pikachu. And that's not even getting started on the fact that even though these are outdated Pokemon models, the models themselves are animated better than they've ever been in a core Pokemon game. Now, a while ago I would have said this is the best looking Switch game I've ever played. But then I did some rethinking and replaying for some recent footage, and I came to the conclusion that there are still 3 more to go. But nevertheless, this definitely shows that the Switch is definitely capable of being a monster in the graphics department. Number 3 is Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze for the Wii U. Yes, that's right. Another Wii U game makes the list, because Wii U games actually look good, in case someone didn't give you the memo. I shouldn't be surprised that this game was developed by Retro Studios, as They really know how to optimize the system's graphics. Even back when they made Metroid Prime 3 on the Wii, Game Informer of all people, who are real sticklers for graphics, if you think I'm bad, said, someone forgot to tell Retro that Wii games aren't supposed to look good, and so they continued the tradition on the Wii U, making this look similar enough to the art style of Donkey Kong Country Returns, and then just expanding on it and making it look even better, including animating the fur of the Kongs in the opening cutscene, and even if you look close enough in actual gameplay, you can see their fur moving. Not only that, but the animations are full of personality, and everything in the levels makes sense. If you've got a floating platform, there's some kind of logical explanation for why it's elevating instead of just, it's a video game, so just use your imagination. Not only that, but the water effects are stunning, especially the fact that you can actually swim in the water in this game, which doesn't usually happen in most of the games on this list. And to top it all off, the cinematics look really top-notch. Overall, I definitely hope that Retro Studios can continue their tradition of making good-looking Donkey Kong games, as I'd love to see what a Donkey Kong game from the ground up would look like on the Switch, instead of Tropical Freeze being ported and looking pretty much exactly like the Wii U game, just with Funky Kong. Number 2 is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, I wanted to put the Wii U version on here because, again, they hardly look any different, but the Switch version also adds new battle tracks, which means more good graphics to look at instead of the lame battle mode in the Wii U version. Also, happy 35th anniversary, Zelda! Nintendo may not be doing much to celebrate, but I sure am by showing off this track. Mario Kart 8, honestly, was such a mind-blowing experience that I would say at times it looks better than some of the competition's games. And it blows a lot of Switch games out of the water, and yet this was one of the earliest Wii U games. The 8 Deluxe version adds some purple sparks, some of the confetti stays on the ground, and you can even play on a Splatoon level in one of the battle modes. Not only that, but the rain, water, and fire effects look... honestly, they look like they could be a console ahead of its time. And there's just so much good to talk about that I don't even know where to begin. Let's just say that when I first played Mario Kart 8 on my Wii U, I couldn't stop saying wow. And honestly, when I rented Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and played it even just in handheld mode, not on the TV, I still couldn't stop myself from saying wow. Number 1 is What Remains of Edith Finch for the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, I'm pretty sure none of you expected this, even if you've been a longtime viewer of my reviews. You probably thought, oh, Paul would definitely say Mario Kart 8 or New Pokemon Snap. Well, the thing is, I've always been a stickler for things looking realistic, and honestly, if you didn't know that this was a video game besides all the letters on the screen, would you be able to tell that this was a video game? Honestly, at a glance, it looks just like a walking nature documentary, especially in this outdoor part where you're walking towards the house. It feels like the kind of game where every single detail was so meticulously crafted in such a way that you would think that it was a movie. There are a couple of exceptions. Some of the dream sequences completely break that mold by having very unrealistic graphics, and the shark. Enough said. But overall, What Remains of Edith Finch is a jaw-dropping experience that looks so stunning that I'm honestly surprised it couldn't get on the Switch at all. But the even more surprising thing is that this was done by an indie company, and it still looks this great. So, Nintendo, what's your excuse?